Hi, welcome to my studio. I'm Barbara Swift and you're watching BSwiftArt. In today's video, I'm going to paint a loose fall landscape. In Michigan, where I'm from, my favorite time of year is September because the leaves just are starting to turn. All the maples are turning red. There's the golds from the oak trees and lots of greens still happening, so everything's still fresh and alive, but it's just really pretty with all the different colors. We're going to do a little stream. I'm going to show you how to do water. I'm going to use masking fluid in this one. I'm going to use sea sponges, and I'm going to show you how to make clouds. Sound fun? Okay, come on, let's go paint. I'm going to start with a couple reference photos. I like something about both of these photos. The colors in this one on the right and on the left. I really like that yellow tree in the background and the angle of some of the trees in the foreground. I'm going to make up my own as I go, but I'm just going to take some hints from these. So I'm just going to start by drawing in the banks of the river and a horizon line. You can't see it too good there, but I'm going to use some masking fluid. You know me, I don't like masking fluid, but in some cases it's the best way to go. So what masking fluid does is it blocks the paint from touching the paper until you're ready to take it off. So when I take it off, it'll be pure white paper under there, and then you can add some of the brighter, lighter colors or just leave it white. I'm using a coffee stirrer, and I'm just going to do it very loosely. You could use a paintbrush, but it does gunk up your paintbrushes, and I've ruined a lot of brushes with masking fluid. That's mainly the reason I don't like to use it unless I have to. But in this painting, it's fine to just use a little throwaway coffee stirrer. And I'm just going to randomly place some little blobs on there. So you can see here, this is after it dries. It dries a little darker. I put some in the water, and I put some over where my rocks are going to be. And I wet just the top of half of the paper above my horizon line, and I'm coming in and making my sky. So you can see how wet it is. It's very wet because I want all my paint to blend together. I'm going to do it a little streaky because I want to put some clouds back there. So I'm not aiming for a really smooth wash, but it's okay if it's a little lighter and darker. So here we go. This is how it looks. So it's some wispy kind of clouds in the background, but I'm going to make some more prominent clouds with my trusty toilet tissue. And this is the thin stuff, the cheap stuff. It's the best stuff because it doesn't have much of a pattern in it. I'm going to ball up my toilet tissue and make a shape with it, but I don't really want any of those straight edges, so I'm going to tuck those under. And I'm just going to roll it across my paper. See there? Magic. There's a cloud. And you can put as many as you want. Just go ahead and get a fresh section every time so it'll absorb and not reprint the paint back onto the paper. And you can blot it if you want, but that rolling action really makes a nice random cloud where they don't all look the same like a cookie cutter. So that's my favorite way to do it. And you can just blot a little bit. So there's all my clouds. And then just to highlight my clouds, if you look at them, they're usually darker on the bottom where they're in shadow, or they might have, a gray cast where they have some rain, or at sunset, they're purple. So I'm just adding some color on the bottom just to deepen them up a little bit, just with my paintbrush, putting in a few little shadows here and there, and kind of blending them in with just some water on my brush. Just soften them up a bit. You can really have fun with clouds. You can put different colors in there, like when the sun is setting. Actually, in this painting, they're probably all going to get covered up, but some might peek through. So I like to put them in there anyway. It doesn't hurt, and they're a lot of fun to do. And I'll put some in, break them up a little bit here and there. And just get a little bit of water on my brush and soften out, mainly the tops. I don't really want them to be a lot of hard lines or too dark, so I soften it out a little bit. Define a few of the little ones that are floating around. And then another trick is I come back with another wad of the clean toilet tissue and just kind of roll and blot in there to kind of make another layer of clouds, and it kind of softens up that bottom part where we added the darker paint, but it's still there. Okay, we're going to start with the trees, and these are the trees in the background, so I'm not paying any attention at all to anything with detail. I'm just putting color back there. So there's a nice still lime green fresh leaves on this one back here, and then I'm going to add some reds and some browns and some darker greens, whatever colors you want, but you don't have to add detail. You're just kind of blocking in shapes of trees. So here I'll put another color in here and I like to let them blend together. I think that's really pretty. So I'm using like a dusty smoky blue here. I think that's probably Prussian blue, and I'm letting it mix in that green. Just kind of don't really want them to look too solid, so I leave a little bit of space in between because you never know how many trees made up that one little blob, right? So, so I leave a little space in there, and I'll put a little bit more blue right about here, and just kind of tapping it in. You can see I'm holding my paintbrush towards the back. That gives you a little bit of a looser action. You're not holding it really tight and making details. Hold it towards the back and it makes your brush loose. Loosen your wrist. I'll put a little bit here, and I'm going to let some of that peek in behind the tree that I masked off. That's going to be yellow, so it's going to be bright and stand out more. And I put a little bit more water in my paint and make a little bit thinner, and that makes a different shade of the blue. And I'll come back with a little bit of this red color, like I think it's alizarin crimson, and because I want it to look like fall is just starting. That's one of my favorite times of the year. It's so beautiful. All the different trees, all the different colors. But my worst time of year is when all the leaves drop, because then to me everything is dead and I can't wait for spring to come and bring me some color. So one of the reasons why I moved to Florida from Michigan. I love Michigan. It's a beautiful state, but the winters are long. It's great if you like to ski and snowmobile and all that. It's paradise, but I don't like cold too much, so I never did much of that. And I'm going to put some darker browns here. It's my Van Dyke brown. Now I'm watering these down. I want them to be very faint in the background. And I'm doing several different colors in a small area so they look like they're small, and that's in the distance. And we'll put a few over here, and I'm going to paint trees on top of the ones on the sides, so I'm not too particular about it. I want to bring that brown right into my water back there as it's reflecting what's behind it. I went ahead and got my flat brush out so I could just block in some color faster, and I'm using the side of my brush, and then I use the flat side of my brush, use just a corner of my brush to make some delicate leaf shapes, just kind of making it look shaggy. Just making little shaggy trees back there, putting in some different colors. See there, I'm covering up my clouds, but some of them will peek through. Yeah, I love using the side of that brush. And I'm also going to bring that down. So I'm going to bring it down into the kind of grassy ground as I go here. So those colors will continue down to the water. And I'll allow this little space here to peek through with the clouds. Put some browns in there, greens. You can put whatever colors you like. They could be flowering trees. If you wanted to do a spring landscape, you could put, pinks in there and whites and purples. And I'm just kind of blocking in a tree that might be along a little closer up, so I'm bringing it farther down the side. And you can see when it dries much lighter, so always keep that in mind. So there's one side, and I just kind of let those colors mingle there. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the left side of the painting. And I'm letting some of those colors reflect in the water, so I'm bringing them right out into the water where the trees are going to be more on the shore. And it's funny, in this picture that I'm holding, you can see there's rocks on one side of the river, but on the other side, it's just vegetation. So I didn't mask off any rocks on that side. And there's just some greens poking through in the background there. So I'm keeping that light green, trying to make it a little different from those trees in the way back there in the background. And using the corner of my brush, make it look like it's leaves. Give it a little bit of a shape, but not too defined. Adding some more colors. I'm doing the same thing as I did on the other side. And I'm thinking I'm going to have some fall leaves. This is where I'm just going to add in what I want instead of what's in the picture. So I'm going to put a maple tree or a red tree. It's not going to be real, have any definition much either, but, and I'm bringing that bank into the water. And it kind of dried on me up here and I didn't get that effect, but we'll see what we can do once we get there. There's always a remedy. There we go. So now I have both sides done. You can see I just started in the water. It's all dry. I put my wrist on the paper. If it feels cold, it's not dry. So you gotta let it dry really well. And now we can start doing a little bit more with the water here. So the water is always darker down by the horizon, so I'll start out with some darker and work my way up to a little bit lighter of the blue. And I'm thinking about what colors I'm going to have the trees be on each side of the bank. So these are the colors that are in the trees farther away. So I'm going to go ahead and put their reflection into my water. So I got the greens and the golds, browns, just like I already painted on there. And I'm trying to, they're pretty tall in the back, so maybe they'd be reflecting a little bit. And I'm kind of thinking about the shape that they are. There's a couple peaks there and where the greens are and where the golds are. This is going to be a very loose painting, so don't have to be too precise, but you just want to give just a little bit of information so when somebody looks at it, they know what they're looking at, but you don't have to have many details. I'm going to come back with a little bit of a brighter cobalt blue and put some of that in the water. And I'm just doing this, it's wet on wet. I put a little bit of water on before I started. And there's some darker leaves. I'm going to have a red tree right there. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of red and some of the dark greens because the water might be a little murky, or because of the leaves that have settled onto the bottom of the shore there. I'm kind of thinking about shadows that would be in this river because the river is probably not that deep. I would think you could walk on some rocks through it. So I'm just thinking about shadows and where they would be. And there's not a lot of trees in the side. I just have one, and it's going to be a maple tree, so I put a little bit of red in there. And then I'm thinking, in the foreground here, I want it to be brighter blue because the sun is able to reach this area even more and reflect from the sky. So I'm putting in some of that brighter blue, and I'm blending it horizontally. So if you see how my brush is, I'm just using the tip of that flat brush and doing horizontal lines and leaving in, some areas where there's white and where it's masked off. When I take that masking fluid off, that'll be white. So those can be the highlights in my water. So it's just kind of built in that way. And I'll put some lighter blue here in the front. And blend it a little bit into those shadow areas so they don't look too separated. Just very soft. And get some of these a little bit darker areas. There's probably rocks under that water, I'm thinking. So they're going to have a little bit of dark shadow around those rocks. And my Windows is wanting me to update here, so that's what you hear. A little Windows update. You probably know that one well. And we'll just keep on blending. And remembering that this is going to dry lighter. So I'm thinking now I need to come in with a few little darker colors. So put some more of the greens and bring them across a little. So water's really fun to paint. You can play with it and keep adding layers to it. I put a few spots of red in the water. So now I'm thinking about that in the background. So I got a nice space where it's really soft, and that's a good area where I can stick in a few background tree trunks. So this is negative painting, so I'm going to leave the tree trunk. I'm not going to paint. I'm going to paint the space between the tree trunks. And you can see I'm doing the bottom of the tree also, so I'm letting the tree itself be the negative part of the negative painting. So I'm just kind of outlining where I think a tree trunk should go, and then I'm just going to fill in between my tree trunks. And remember, this is off in the distance, so they should be small. You don't want to make them too big. Keep them tiny. And space them out differently. You know, you don't want them to be like soldiers all standing in a row. That's not the way they'd be in nature. So I just kind of try to make it as even as I can. I'm going to add some all the way across this river part. So some taller and some shorter. And maybe like a little break in the tree, a little wide, a Y area where the branches go out. So there you go. I have all of mine in there in the background. So it's just some small little trees. Now I'm going to add some leaves. I'm going to start with that maple tree. So I got my nice beautiful red here. And I'm using the brush very loosely, holding it at the very tip of the brush and just very loosely dabbing in here and there, but leaving a lot of space in between, and also using darker and lighter. I'm gonna put a few little sprinkles in there, kind of help guide me where I want to go. There. So you can see some are darker, some are lighter. And I'm going to make a little pile at the bottom of the tree because some of those leaves have fallen off. The tree's kind of sparse now. So I'm going to do the same technique there. And just put a little bit of pile of a leaf there so nobody's raked up. There. See what I'm doing with the brush? I took the brush bristles themselves and just brushed them across another brush, and that makes a little bit bigger of splatters when I do that. So when you just kind of tap it onto the paintbrush, they're smaller, and if you tilt your brush down, you can control where they go a little bit more. And if you want to make bigger ones, you want to get a little bit more water in your brush, and you can just shake them on if you got enough water in your brush. And you can make these with a toothbrush, you know, just put your thumb across the bristles. There, so I put a couple colors of green in there. I put a couple colors of the red. I'm going in with a little bit deeper here and there. Put a little more sprinkles. I love sprinkles. To me, it kind of makes the painting more whimsical and very loose. And it looks more like it's just a painting, not like I'm trying to duplicate something in real life. Just, to me, it's like the artist touch. So just put some more dark in there. This is a really fine line because you don't want to go too heavy with this or you start losing all of your empty space. And your empty space between these leaves is very important. So you want to get the shape of the tree and then probably like the shadows or the depth of the tree. That's what we're aiming at. So there, I think that looks pretty good on that side. So let's go over to the right and I'll go ahead and put another tree over here. And this one, we're going to go with more of the browns and greens. I'm just kind of shaping it with my sprinkles. See that? See how I'm doing that on the brush? That makes those big blobs. So there's a lot of water on there. There. So now I got more orange and browns and greens. And I can splatter a little bit in the background. Just because there's trees between here and there, so I might as well put a few leaves in there. Like I said, it's just a little bit of information, but not a lot of details. I'll put some on this side. So that's a lot of water and a little bit of paint on my brush. Put a bit of gold and yellow in there. You don't want it to be all one level. You want some toned shadows in there. Okay, so that's still drying a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is put the branches in. I'm going to go with a nice dark brown. And in my photo, the trees are kind of clumped together. They're young trees with thinner trunks, and they kind of are tilted a little bit towards the bank. So I'm going to go in between the leaves, let some of the leaves be in the foreground so that it doesn't look flat and one-dimensional. I'm just kind of dashing, dash, dash, dash in between, and put some out on the sides. So it's wet, so I don't want to drag through it too much. And it's okay if they bleed a little bit. I'm mainly just painting in the dry areas because I'm going between the wet spots. A couple more tree trunks over here. There. So those are the culprits for all those leaves in the pile. Now it's nice and dry, so I'm going to go ahead and remove my masking fluid. I'm just using this little rubber, it's like a crepe eraser, that's what that's called. You could use masking tape, you can use your fingers just to remove all that masking fluid. It will roll right off. It's pretty fun to remove it. And now you can see where the masking fluid was. It leaves kind of a hard line. So none of the paint, blended soft through it. There's no paint at all underneath there. So I'm going to go ahead and put some lines in there to soften it up. Soften it up and then also soften the bottoms of the rocks up. Just put some shadows in there where the rocks would be a little bit under the water as well. Put some shadows. And maybe start forming the rocks. You wouldn't believe it, but rocks are really hard to do. They are for me anyway. But if you look at a lot of the rocks, they have flat angles to them. So that's what I'm going to go with these ones. So I'm just going to paint everything just very angular. And switch the angles, but flatter on the top and have some angles coming down. I'll put a few colors in there too. I'll put some, this is the darkest color now, the Van Dyke brown. And then keep going on the rocks as they go down, softening those hard edges. And put some angles in there. My art teacher said that all her rocks look like boiled potatoes, or no, baked potatoes. Baked potatoes. So she struggles with rocks as well. So I'm going to leave, so that kind of got that little bit of a dry brush look there. So paint over that. And I put a little bit of golds in there. Left some of the areas that had the dry brush look to it just for some texture, make them interesting. And yeah, see, I'll put some of that raw umber, I think that is. I always get those umbers confused in the siennas, because I just have a palette of colors and I forget to pay attention to the names. I'm going to add in a few more rocks in between so they didn't look so intentional. And I took that masking fluid off of the trees, so now I can paint the yellow on that because I wanted that to be bright and stand out. So I'm painting the yellow, and I'm leaving some white in there too because I think the sun would be shining on it and those highlighted areas of the leaves would be white. So I'm not going to paint it solid. I'm going to put my yellows in there, and I'm coming back and putting just a little bit of green also, just a bit for some depth. I always want to use more than one color. So this is lemon yellow I'm putting on there, and I'm going to come on back and put the trunk on these side trees. So you can see it's not exactly like my reference photo. In fact, it's pretty far off. But I just use the idea and the composition that the photo was taken in. But I didn't want to put those two trees that are right in the front. So, because I think it's kind of blocking my picture. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up those tree trunks. And then I wanted to add some grasses. This is a fun trick. So I have this really super soft Chinese brush. And you can break them apart and make them different sizes if you want. But this is the full one. And you just put some paint, and while it's still wet, you brush through it, and it makes that fuzzy, grassy look. It's good for fur too, like if you're going to paint an animal. So I got some nice wet gold in there, and I'm just gonna brush it, and I'm gonna brush it right up into that green and just kind of make a softer transition. So there. So now it looks like just bunches of different grasses are growing, and I'm gonna put some grass here in the foreground. So instead of those big trees, but I'm gonna put grasses. I like to put something in the foreground that's kind of bigger and darker. And then your eye will go to that corner. It'll make that corner stand out from the other corners. So I got a super dark green here. And I'm going to paint in, I was thinking cattails, but then I thought, well, they're going to be kind of like plumes with some white, a little bit of grasses that are left over from the plume pods. So I'm going to do nice long strokes, and I'm using my rigger, which is a long bristled brush, thin, great for making lines, also known as a line brush. I'm just going to put a few in the front here so everything looks like it's set back. And now let's come over to the left side and do some more of those little grassy areas. And I don't want to make it too, horizontal. Maybe the grasses grow a little bit longer over there by the bank. So I'll go ahead and brush them up. There. I like how that one turned out. That turned out really good. That was the effect I was looking for. I'm going to come on down the bank and put in some more color. And I'm still thinking about what I'm going to do with that hard edge that I have created there on the edge of the bank. So I'm probably going to put in some grasses or something there also. just to soften it. And I'm bringing some of that yellow into my water as a reflection. So I had this idea to use my sea sponge. I like sea sponges because they come in different sizes and different shapes. Good idea to test it out first and see what you're going to get. And I'm thinking, oh, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to put some here in the foreground because those areas will be a little larger and a little bit more defined. So it's just vegetation. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on. But see how I'm turning my wrist when I do that. So it's not an identical pattern. So I'm twisting my fingers and moving it in different directions so that I'm not stamping the exact pattern over and over again. So I got a couple shades of green in there. And then I'm going to come on back with a little bit darker of a green. Just here and there. Also wanting to leave some of that light background space so it doesn't look too solid. A little bit more dark there. And this is my bleed-proof white. And I'm just going to go ahead and put some splatters, which are like little flowers, still growing in the vegetation there. So I'm going to splatter in some fine splatters. And just see how I'm flicking it on my brush there. That'll make thicker splatters. See how they're bigger splatters. And if I put it down low, I can control where they're going to go. And I'm going to take the tip of my brush and just make a few even bigger ones right closer to the foreground. So I'm leaving them smaller as they go back. And in the foreground I can make them a little bit larger. And some little more splatters there in the background. And I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to go up one side of my tree. There's my text message. That's my little roadrunner. Beep beep. So go up one side of the tree where the sun will be shining on that side. Make sure I get all of my branches. Go in between. And I'm going to do all of my tree trunks like that. They kind of almost resemble, you could do a birch tree like that if you wanted. Just put more white and then you could put some horizontal dark lines and it'd be a birch tree. But the birch trees turn kind of gold in the fall, so this one's a maple. Young ones, young maples. Okay, so that's good for that side. Let's go over to the right and do the same thing. And I'm just kind of swirling it a little bit. I don't want it to look too straight. You know, give it, so make a little tree bark texture in there. And it also kind of softens them out. Makes them look slightly more realistic. Not that we're going for realistic in this painting, but you know what I mean. Get those dark ones up there. Take a look at it. Come on over to this one in the foreground. I'm going to make the white even brighter because you can see more detail as they come closer. Make sure I get those ones in between. Just using the very tippy tip of my brush. When you use this It's called Doc PH Martin Bleed Proof White. You want to make sure you rinse it out of your brush really good. Don't let it dry on your brush. It'll be really hard to get off of it. I'm going to put a few highlights on my rocks as well, so they look a little sun bleached. Okay. So maybe we should add a few birds flying. So birds just are like check marks. So put a few little flying birds back there. And then I'm going to go ahead and put some tree trunks with that negative painting, just like we did in the center at the back of the river. There's a little area here that could use a few background trees. I'm going to go ahead and paint them in, leave a Y in one of the trees, make some shorter, some longer. So the same thing, and continuing the tree down. So it looks like it's way behind this forefront tree. So make sure you put that tree trunk. That's what I'm trying to think. What's it called? A tree trunk. Make sure that it goes behind the leaves, not in front of the leaves, because it's in the background. Okay, just like that. You don't have to define it in the bottom at all. Okay, so now we're just taking a look at it. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, I wanted to put some kind of plumes. So I'm going kind of up and down, making little clusters of dots. And I'm using this big, I think it's a number, I know it's a pretty big, like an inch around. So it's a quill from China, and I love it because it holds so much water, so much paint. So if you're going to do things with loosely, these are great to use. Do your flowers, anything you want to do really loosely. It's real floppy. It holds so much paint. Okay, so now I'm going to just sit here and take another good look at it and see what else I need. This doesn't seem finished to me yet. So I'm looking at all my little spaces and my trees in the background. I'm thinking I need some darker water back there. And these are pretty good. Could use another layer of some loose leaves. It's not necessary. And I'm coming to my foreground. I like that. It kind of looks like plumes. My water could use a little bit more color perhaps. And I'm coming over to here. I like the white flowers because they look fuzzy, kind of like a dandelion or something. I think I might have to add something else to it. So I'm going to put in some opera pink and just put a few little splashes of maybe there's little poppies in there or some kind of other little flower. It doesn't even have to be a real flower. So I'm just going to put a few little pinks in there. Kind of going up and down with these dots so that maybe they are a spike kind of flower. So whatever kind they are, they're different from the white ones, and it adds just a little bit of color there and different corners. So I didn't want them to look the same. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit darker water on the horizon line there. And then doing that horizontal motion. Kind of coming in between where I have that white from masking it off, and maybe soften that up with a little bit of water and just blend it in a little bit. Here's a little bit of water on my brush here. Just kind of blend it down, blend it in and around those white highlights. I don't want to paint over them too much, so just a little bit. Okay, I think we're finished. Thank you for staying and watching my whole video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like it, if you would please subscribe, press the like button if you liked it, and that really helps me with my YouTube video. So there's the painting. Peace and love be with you till I see you again. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.